a sensible ecological sequence. Now, when a geologist sees this sort of, a paleontologist in particular, sees a sequence of fossils that are in an ecological order, they immediately think, you know, one possibility here is that there is a transgressive sequence where sea level is rising and picking off an ecological sequence in succession. There's a number of things in geology. Whenever we see a certain set of rocks in sequence, if we see a gravel followed by a sandstone, followed by a shale, followed by a carbonate, we think, sequence. That's a sequence you would expect on a seashore, where the gravel is up above the beach, the sand is on the beach, the shale is offshore, and the carbonate reef would be farther out. So if the ocean is moving on land, it's going to leave that sequence, an ecological sequence of rocks. And it would also leave the ecological sequence of fossils in the rocks where they lived. So this immediately suggests maybe there's an ecology that is picked off by the flood in a sequence that would make sense of this. What ecology would this fit? Well, now here's where my own strange background comes into play. Back when I was about 12 years old, I was invited to go with a biology graduate student to a quaking bog. I had never been to a quaking bog, and I had no idea what this meant, but it was a field trip. It was fun. We got out of the car, this was in Indiana, and we climbed up and down these very, very steep, very high hills for quite some distance. They're actually really old sand dunes, about 200 feet high, that are covered with forest. Can't tell they're sand dunes. You would only know that because of context and so on. Otherwise, we're just going up and down, up and down, up and down. And we're in the middle of this oak hickory subclimax forest. Beautiful place. It's similar to where I grew up, and so it was fun. And then I noticed the forest changed, not in the type of plants, but in the fact that it was now very flat. We are no longer having to go up and down. That's what I noticed. You don't have to do as much work to walk through the forest. And at one point, the biologist who's leading us said, okay, everybody stop. Everybody grab hands. And I want you, what we're going to do is we're going to go up and down at the same time. As I go up, you go up. When I go down, you go down. Hey, this guy's lost his rocker. He's all right. You know, what is going on? So here's everybody trying to do this. And there was a certain up and down. And at first, I say, I just hope no one's watching us. And then I realized, wait a minute. The ground is actually giving away under us. And the ground is going up and down. And it's going up and down in sequence with us. And then I began to realize that as we went down, and then came back up, it would create a wave that would go away from us, 360 degrees in all directions. This wave in the ground would come to a tree, and the tree would, and then as it goes away, and it's like, where are we? We can teletransported to another planet. And I realized, wow, maybe the reason this forest is flat is because it's on top of a body of water. We're floating. This is a floating forest. This is crazy. I mean, if I hadn't been there, I just wouldn't have been able to believe it. As we walk then further, he stopped the bouncing. We walk then further out towards the center of the lake. As we did, the trees got smaller. The ground under us became less and less firm, and it got to where you could do it all by yourself. You could move the ground. A little bit further, you realize if you did this too much, you'd probably go through, and it's scared the bejeebers out of me. So, and about the time it gets down to very short trees, you're a little bit concerned about walking on it. And so you begin hands and knees. You're walking across there, and then when it gets down to tall bush cranberries, and then short bush cranberries, now you're really concerned. And at this point, I'm out there on my belly, and I'm crawling around, and I'm looking directly at sphagnum moss and these beautiful Venus flytraps, and it's magnificent. And then you could see, as you went out towards the middle of the lake, it's open water. And obviously you can't go any further, or we would go through. This was my experience with a quaking bog. And it really made a big impact upon me, and I never forgot it. The basic idea is that as the glaciers came down over the land and then retreated, they would not only leave a bunch of debris melted into the ice, but they'd leave these large icebergs in the midst of it. Then the icebergs would melt, leaving these little lakes. And the lakes then, subsequently, the vegetation would grow in from the outside of the lake towards the middle of the lake. This is a picture of Volo Bog in Illinois, which is the last quaking bog left in the state of Illinois. And when you look at it in cross-section, from the open water in the middle to the trees, in this case in the outside, but there are some bogs actually where the trees are in the middle and they're actually growing out towards the outside. You go from short things to tall things. You go from sedges and reeds to taller bushes, and then very tall bushes, and then full forest. And you eventually fill the entire lake. And then fill the bottom in, and you never even know that's what you... Just to prove that this is really... So there are actually videos from Volo Bog just showing you that these... It's again hard to believe unless you're actually there. Some cattails. It's wild. Actual tree here. I'm actually moving the tree in the middle of the bog. Quite spectacular. Okay, the basic idea, again, is going from small to large plants, from floaters at the one end, a false bottom out there, which is really interesting. It looks like that pollywog is sitting on the bottom, but actually about a foot beneath the surface there is this false bottom. Looks like it's the bottom, but it ain't. You'll go right through. It's really very interesting. And then sedges, and then tall bushes, and then full trees. You'd never know you were actually in the middle of a forest unless you actually move that stuff. There's increasing size and terrestriality as you move from the water to the land. And it's, while I was puzzling over the sequence of fossils in the Paleozoic, seeing that there's an increased terrestriality of fossils, that I thought, floating bogs have increasing terrestriality as we move towards the inside. And then I realized also